Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session about getting the simplicity of Heroku on OVHcloud. This session will feature a demo with Cloud 66 for Rail apps, and you will learn with our guest today how to do that step by step. So I'm Andrew Raman Rasoa. I'm in product marketing for Public Cloud, and I'm really happy to have today our guest, Cash from Cloud 66. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Cash.
Thank you, Andre. As you said, I'm Cash from Cloud 66, and I'm very happy to be here to show what we have built over the past 5 to 6 years that will enable the simplicity of Heroku on top of a great cloud provider like OVH anywhere for application developers. And I would love to show you what we have.
Hey, thank you, Cash. So we at OVHcloud, we are really excited to have you here and with this partnership with Cloud 66. Basically, what we are seeing today that all organizations are today producing software in some sort. But however, in many cases, we see that the way applications are produced and then pushed into production, they still have some conflicts between developers and DevOps or Ops. On the one hand, developers are asked to ship software faster to the market because the business needs it, while on the other hand, Ops, which are responsible for the reliability and stability of the infrastructure, have kind of different interests. And this generates frustration from both sides. So, well, we address this problem because our public cloud is now integrated within Cloud 66 platform, and this enables us to bridge the gap with devs and ops. And that's why it's really important for us as OVH Cloud. And thanks to Cloud 66, we strengthen our value to the developer ecosystem audience. So Cash, I'm really pleased to have you give us more detail and tell us more about Cloud 66.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So we have 4 products at Cloud 66 that will help developers deploy applications and manage their infrastructure with a lot of simplicity on top of OVH Cloud. But the main premise of all of our products, what runs through the DNA of Cloud 66 is we are application developers. We are not infrastructure people. We leave infrastructure to good experienced people like OVHcloud that they know what they're doing. What we are is application developers. And on that side, we sit on the developer side of the table. We think that what we want to do is to be on the developer side and make applications work on any infrastructure and make it work great without having them think about the intricacies of scaling, blocking bad guys out, security, and also managing, worrying about the runaway costs that might happen. And we want to have that without locking with the generic experience. That's not like past experiences like Heroku, where you end up locked into a specific framework, but with providing the primitives that build an application on top of a generic compute network and storage blocks that cloud providers like OVH will provide you. And we found this partnership particularly fruitful because we really think OVH is really good at taking care of the infrastructure side. And we have seen that tens of thousands of developers that use Cloud 66 on our platform, they really like the developer specific and developer centric experience, and that's the whole thing that we have to offer here. A very tight integration between an infrastructure provider and a developer centric application provider to deliver a great experience for developers, and having that experience transferred over to the users of the applications that they developed. With that, I can jump right into the demo and show you a little bit about one of these products, which is Cloud 66 for Rails, to show how it works and how it feels as an application developer, and why this could be a game changer for application developers to build great experiences for the users. So let's jump right in. This is my Cloud 66 dashboard. I have 3 applications that I've deployed. 2 of them are Cloud 66 Skycaps, which we can talk about later. But today I want to focus on Rails and how I want to deploy that on OVH. Now, just a little bit of background. Ruby on Rails, if you're familiar with, is a very opinionated, very popular web application development framework. It is used by the companies likes of Airbnb, GitHub, and a lot of other great companies that deliver great experiences to their users. It's now about perhaps 7, 8 years old, maybe more, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a very mature yet dynamic web application development framework. And we started Cloud 66 by building Cloud 66 itself on top of Rails. And we wanted the best deployment experience for ourselves. And this ended up being what we have as a product right now. So my stack here is the one that I created earlier today. It's a Rails sample stack that we have. I deployed it on OVHcloud right today, but I'm going to do it again and deploy another one on OVHcloud US data center, just to show how easy it is to deploy a Ruby on Rails application on top of OVHcloud. Now, we have a repository on GitHub, which you can have a look. It's under Cloud 66-samples. And it is a set of various different applications with different frameworks, different languages, a lot of them Ruby, Node, and Go, that are there to show how easy it is to deploy things with Cloud 66. But one thing that we wanted to make sure is that we don't have a hello world simple, just a to-do list or a blog post application as a sample that doesn't reflect the real world problems that developers face. So this is one of those applications. This is a Ruby on Rails stack that uses MySQL as the database. To get started, what I want to do is I just want to go to Cloud 66 dashboard. I select Rails as the stack that I want to deploy. As you can see, it's a very simple form with 4 fields. One is about where the application comes from, a Git repository. The second one is the branch within the same repository. The third one is an environment, which we are all familiar with. I'm going to choose production. And then you give it a name. That's all you need to deploy your application. So I'm going to copy the link for my stack or for my source code over here. I'm going to leave the branch to master, select production. I'm going to give it a Rails Ruby on Rails on OVHcloud as a name. The next thing is for me to click on Analyze. So while this is happening, let me tell you what is actually going on behind the scenes. Because we take a development-centric approach to application deployment, what we're doing now is we read the code and we analyze the code, looking for different signals within the code as to how it works. We don't use a generic way of deploying anything onto the cloud provider by sucking in the code, sticking it into a container with a Docker image, and then coming out and say, here's the code, here's the port, and that's basically it. We really want to understand how the application interacts, what components does it use. So one of the things that are going on right now is that we try to find out what databases this application is using. And this is not something that we asked. As you saw, I just gave it the name of the repository and then the branch. That was all I asked. I was asked. But here, as you can see, we've detected that this obviously was production. Which version of Rails are we using from the code? Which version of Ruby are we using? Which version of the application provider, which is Fusion Passenger, is a Rails application server, which version of that is using? We also found signals and parts of the code that are using MySQL. So that's a thing that we didn't really wanted to the developers to enter into a form and go through the whole process there. And then we found that there's a proc file, which is essentially background processes that are powering the system. We detected that too. But more is that we created all the things that are needed for that application to be deployed as environment variables that are Rails friendly on top of it as well. So since we found out that there is a database, a MySQL database involved, we created all the environment variables for that, as well as secret keybase, for example, which is a requirement for Rails 6 and onwards. We created that, or Rails 5 and onwards. We created that as well. So as you can see, it's a very Rails or framework specific approach to this, as opposed to a generic, we do support environment variables, but you have to enter it yourself. We start by what actually starts to work. From there, all you need to do is to select the cloud provider of your choice. My favorite is the OVH US here. The data center that's there, all the images and all the server sizes that cloud provider potentially provides. So I'm here basically not changing anything, just selecting the cloud provider that I want. And then here, all I'm saying is, now that I want to have a database server, do I want to share that with my Rails server, or you want to have it as an external one, or do I want to get an existing one from some other database provider or somewhere else that I might have already available? Obviously, for a production environment, you want to have a separate server for your database. That's the best choice. But for the simplicity, I'm going to just share it with this server. Now, the reason that I'm making this selection as to what my MySQL is that, as you noticed, we just don't stop at deploying the application. Not only do we fire up servers on OVHcloud for the application itself, but we also fire up servers on OVHcloud for the database as well. So it's not just the application, it's the database with it as well. The next thing for me to do is just to press deploy application, and the application starts to work. Now, this is going to take about 10 minutes, depending on all the packages and bringing everything else up. But I'm going to go up and go to my the stack that I deployed just earlier today. So as you can see, I have 3 virtual servers here, all of them sharing the same physical server. We give them animal names. So this is Swallow, which is the Rails server. The second one is a MySQL server, again, shared on the same physical server. And the third one is the process server, which is the background jobs that we have. And that's also on the same web server. My application is now up and running. I have an endpoint that I can visit. As you can see here, this is the name of the server, the name of the stack, and then ccc6.me, that's there. This is not secure with SSL. So this is the endpoint that my application is now served on. And that is how easy it is to deploy a Rails application onto OVHcloud. Now, obviously, we don't stop here. There's a lot more that you can do, but this is a great start. For example, as you noticed that we have an F here, which is what we call a stack score. So since I said that my stack is a production stack, what we do is that we analyze not only the code, but the infrastructure setup for that stack. So here what we're saying, your code is good. We do analysis of code for potential vulnerabilities, but we know that you have a database, but you don't have backups. That's not a good thing. So we give that stack an F score. What you can do is you can ignore this if you have backups going on for yourself, or you can set up backups that I can show you later. We're also saying that you're not going to get a good score if you're sharing on a production server, on a production stack, share a database with an application server. So that's the second one. You don't have load balancers and you don't have any failovers. But on security side, you're good. So let's get on and make this all A. The first thing I want to do is I want to set up backups. So my databases, as you can see, I have databases going on. What I can do is I can set a backup. I want it to be managed, which means Cloud 66 will take care of not only taking the backups, but storing them securely for me and archiving them. I want to have daily at 10 a.m. in the morning. I want them compressed. And if you have a replication going on, I want them to run not on the master server, but on the other one, which means it would put less pressure on my servers. But because I don't have replication going on, I'm going to just run it wherever it is. And the type of backup. So binary backups are obviously faster, but text backups are more portable. And that's basically what I do. This will create the backups for me. And the backups will be listed here as soon as they are taken. Obviously, we want it once every day at 10 a.m. So they will be done there. The second thing that we got a bad score for was shared servers. We cannot do anything about that right now because I just set up this stack to be shared servers, but I can certainly do something about the load balancing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and say, I want to have load balancing on my stack, and I click a button, my stack gets on to work, and I'm going to have load balancing on my stack. As you can see, my stack score is now improved from F to a D. Now what I'm getting is you don't have backup verifiers. So what are the backup verifiers? That's another service and the feature that Cloud 66 stacks have. So not only do we help you take backups with as easy as you just saw, take a backup of your stacks, but we can also let you run queries on those data. So every time a backup is taken, we then fire up another instance, which is on our infrastructure. We take the backup out, we restore it to that database, run the queries that you want as a verification to make sure that the backup is what you want it to be. The last thing you want is to have a backup that doesn't work and doesn't do what you want it to, doesn't restore your status to where it used to be after a disaster, during a disaster. You want your backups to be actually useful. And the worst time to know that is when something's gone wrong. So backup verifiers is a great feature to make sure that your backups are verified and they actually do what they're supposed to do. The load balancer is coming up. While it's happening, I'm going to go and look at failover groups. So what are failover groups? Failover groups are something that you can do on top of on the entire account. You can think of it as a fast-acting DNS service. But what it is that I can say, what is my primary stack and what is my secondary stack? I don't have a secondary stack. It's just the primary stack that I have. And when I create one, it gives me an address, cloud66.net. This is the name of this failover group. Now, what do failover groups do? So next time that I want to use this application, instead of hitting the endpoint that was c66.me, and this will swallow c66.me, this time I can just hit the failover group endpoint, this guy. What it means is that if, for example, there's a disaster, something goes wrong with the network or with my cloud provider or with my stack, I can quickly head to application failover groups and switch from my primary to secondary. So I have two complete separate stacks on two different data centers, even two different cloud providers that I can switch from the primary to secondary with a click of a button to avoid disaster. This is a very cost-efficient and economic way of creating disaster recovery for your stacks, for your applications, without having to go through all the scripts and runs and drills and dry runs and all the sort of things that come with disaster recovery. So failover groups is a great way to take care of that for you. My stack score is improving. That's great. Now I'm getting a B on the performance side because I only have one stack. Obviously I have a failover group, but I don't have two stacks for it. So that I can do better. I can create another stack and point it towards that, but I'll leave that to another time. And the shared servers, I'm just going to ignore this one because I'm happy, I'm okay with having a shared server for database and application. That I can do later. And for backup verification, you can also set it up later once our backups are there, or I can just ignore that. So here, I'm just going to show you what looks like on the server side. Again, if you go on a cloud provider like OVHcloud or any cloud provider, because the cloud providers are infrastructure providers, naturally what they show you about a server is very much about how the server is doing. For example, how big the CPU is, how much memory does it have, what kind of disk space type and storage capacity does it have, which is great, which is what you want to see when you go to a cloud provider's dashboard. With us, it's slightly different. When you go to a database server, although it's a server, it shows you other things, except for IP address and the name, which are infrastructure-centric things. We show you things that matter for the application developers, like what's the database name? What is the password for the database? And very few infrastructure things that are very important for application developers. For example, how much disk do I have available on this? And those are the things that you see when you go onto a Cloud66 server detail page. As you see, the ones that actually matter for us are the application-centric one. Now, the same server, from a physical server point of view, if I go to the details of that, you see that for the Rails part, I see slightly different things around that, because those are the things that matter for a Rails developer. I can see here that my failover group is set up on my stack. And while we're waiting for the load balancer to be configured, I'm just going to go and see what we're actually doing. So for load balancer here, we're firing up another server on OVHcloud US. We're installing HA proxy on top of it. We're installing the firewall and security points on top of that, and then we configure it to point to the stack. Now here, when we went last time, this ccc.me name of the application that was there, you see that the name of the server is here. Once I have my load balancer, this name will disappear from here, and I can just go to Rails on OVH.ccc6.me to see my stack. And that automatically changes. So as soon as I add a load balancer, I don't need to worry about, oh, now I have a load balancer, the IP address of the load balancer is so and so, I need to change anything. This all happens automatically for everyone. Now, two more areas that I wanted to touch upon, very important for developers before I move on. One is Active Protect. So Active Protect is something that we deploy on every application for free, on every application that we deploy on OVHcloud with Cloud 66. What does Active Protect do? Active Protect looks for issues around security, unwanted and unmonitored changes, as well as unwanted attacks on your infrastructure. As you can see, luckily here, I don't have anything to worry about. All is green. But it is possible that sometimes I've left, for example, a port open on my server by mistake. For example, somebody wanted to access the production servers on SSH. They left port 22 open, and now that will show up here. And we actually close it for you after 10 minutes if you don't take any actions to make sure that your stacks are secure, your servers are secure. But also, if somebody's trying to access your SSH, if you've left that port open and you don't want to close it for whatever reason, if somebody's trying to repeatedly access that server with different passwords or with different SSH keys or with different usernames just to figure out what has a brute force attack, those will show up here. Their IP addresses will be blocked temporarily until they move on to the next target. So that is a great way to protect your infrastructure against unwanted attention or unwanted attacks when you don't want to have to worry about security and you not necessarily have security expertise in your organization. As well as that, we have a bunch of configuration files on every server. Naturally, if you have MySQL, you might have MySQL configuration file. If you have Nginx, you have Nginx configuration files. And what we do is, as part of Active Protect, we monitor those files for you. So here you see no change files. But if some attacker or somebody who gains access to your servers and want to open up something for later to exploit that, they might go onto the server, they might change a configuration file to leave themselves a backdoor, a backdoor so they can access the server. And that will show up here as a change file because we take a snapshot of a fingerprint of every file that's there as they should be. And as soon as they change, you will get an email, you get alerts that something's changed on the server. And that's a great way to know that something's changed without your permission or approval. The next part is about debugging. Again, another very important part, another important topic and an area for developers. And that's what we call live logs. Now, I know that there's a lot of logging infrastructure around that you can send your application logs to for search and analysis on archiving and indexing and alerts and everything else. And those are doing a great job. What we are focusing on here is about debugging. You deploy your application onto an infrastructure, say OVHcloud today, and it just fails to come up because of some issue that you might have in your application. How do you find out what's going on? So what we do here is that we know, for example, that you are running a Rails application, and Rails usually logs into these files. It logs into a production log, and because we have two background jobs going on as well, we detect that these two are producing logs as well. So as you see, I did not do anything about telling the system what log files I have and what I wanted to watch. It automatically figured out that I have log files, which those log files are. And because I have Nginx on, which is a web server, on that server as well, we included that into it as well. And here you can see that the logs of this application are all available. So I can look at it, I can search if I want to, I can filter them, so I can find any errors that I might have. So here, as you can see, we are producing these logs. We'll be collecting these logs and showing them. We're not storing them because we're not a log facility. We don't want to be, doing something that's not our job. But we feel that it's very important for application developers to have debug-centric log files and monitoring of those when they deploy it to a cloud provider. So this is all I wanted to show you today. As I said at the beginning, we're around at the summit to answer any questions. If you have, that would be great to see you, and we can show you a lot more of what we've done and what we have here. But I think for today, it's great to see that we have to show you what we have built on deploying a very seamless experience of deploying Rails application on top of OVHcloud. And as you can see right now, my load balancer is ready now. So it's now deployed. And what you saw right now is that it's a very seamless experience from code all the way to OVHcloud with very little interference from the operator around the infrastructure side of things. With that, I'll hand over. So yes, as part of this partnership, we are very excited to make accessibility of OVHcloud's great services to all application developers, not just Rails developers, but any application developer. And we have other products that are as simple as this if you're not developing in Rails. As part of that, we've rolled out, as part of this partnership, we're happy to give you $100 of credit in Cloud 66, which can take you a long way for your projects. On this, just use the code that's on the screen right now, and I'm happy to talk about more of the specific things that you might want to achieve on OVHcloud and Cloud 66 as well at the summit. But for now, I think this will take you a long way into making sure that you can try the system. You can see how it can help you by focusing on application development and deploy applications on the great OVHcloud today.
Excellent. Yes. So please, if you have some specific question, please feel free to ask. Should it be about capabilities regarding this platform application? Or if you have some question about what we provide in terms of resources to run better your application, it is the right moment. So thank you very much, and ask your question now.